So I decided to make a short video about what these sound meditations are all about. I should really be writing a grant application, but a really short video, max 10 minutes. I have been doing these sound meditations and I have been uploading them on YouTube. Why on earth? Because it's very probable that no one listens to them because they are just this kind of ambient sound. Maybe they can be used as background music for working, for example, because they are mainly non-verbal. And it's mainly for myself, because I want to somehow document the process that is happening now. And what is that process? It's this. The sound meditations are an attempt, I put this aside, they are an attempt to capture or attain this. And what is this? What is this? It's a Zen koan in Korean Zen Buddhism. It's a koan to ask, what is this? It's a way of stopping. What is this? I'm sitting here in the basement where I do these sound meditations and play, and I speak to a telephone. I don't really speak to a telephone because I speak to that person, whoever it is, who might watch this. And I know that the person who is watching this and understanding these words, that they are also this, because this means consciousness. But this is of course already far away from Zen, which aims at attaining this non-reflective meditative state where you just are this pure consciousness without even noticing it. This is close to this Crick and Koch definition of consciousness, that it's basically all. Consciousness is everything. My whole subjective existence is this. My consciousness. I cannot imagine anything beyond my consciousness. So this is a point in these Zen koans. When a tree falls in a forest and there is no one to hear it, will there be sound? The modern person is insensitive to these kinds of koans, and they will say that there is the motion of air molecules and sound in that sense, but there is no brain sensation or this brain process that is a sensation, and no sound in that sense. But that's really dull. It's not like, I don't mean to put it down in any way, but it's just a way of conceptualizing this, like the non-conceptual experience itself, sort of, or it's a way of knowing, like it's the Western man's or woman's desire to know and to control things with concepts. In Finnish, a concept is called käsite, and it comes from the word hand. And the same in English, to grasp something, to be able to control it, to manipulate. Manus means käsi, like hand. Manus means käsi as well. Manual labor that you do with your hands, that you control. The organic aspect of the process then becomes controlled because we are so afraid of the organic process. And that's why I make these videos, because it's so important to be present in this process of unfolding consciousness as it unfolds from moment to moment, and it's always this for me and for you there, whoever is listening. You have your own this, your own consciousness. And now I am affecting your consciousness as you hear these words. My consciousness, my this, is affecting your consciousness. If I say, imagine a red circle, and you imagine a red circle, or redness, I affected, I caused an experience in you. And that experience is something that you could say is this. And what's the point with using this word this? It's from the Zen tradition. Alan Watts uses it. Many people use it. Two guys here in Finland who wrote a book about Zen philosophy, they named it this. Maybe I can put a link to the book, because it was a nice book, but in Finnish. But those who don't speak Finnish should read Alan Watts, for example, The Way of Zen, or This Is It collection of essays. There are lots of talks on the internet as well, but many of them are really spiritual, and they can be like put you like off-putting, or how do you say, difficult to approach, because they might sound like woo-woo or like pseudo something. Oh, I'm losing my battery. So what is this? The Zen koan. I take that this is consciousness, but consciousness is just a word for this experience. Neuroscientists would say that this consciousness is a neural process. And it's like modeled from the outside based on how this affects measuring devices. And you, right there, you have your own this, your own consciousness. And how do you know my consciousness? How can you know what is my this? At least from a physiological perspective, our brains are very similar. They are really much alike. So our consciousnesses must be quite alike as well. They are quite similar, and after all, our consciousness is not really so different from other animal forms of consciousness, or even from like plants. They are all made of organic molecules and made of atoms. It's not a difference, it's not a categorical difference between us and plants and atoms. It's just a difference of complexity. But these are only ways of conceptualizing this that is brute experience in itself. So what is the worth of the word this? It's used in philosophy in this phenomenal concepts approach to the heart problem by David Papineau, for example. But what I have in mind here is not that kind of usage, because I think the mind-body problem is something more real, more concrete than just a difference between concepts, like the phenomenal concepts guys think it's just something linguistic. It's not linguistic that you have this experience that we know immediately, that we can just refer. What does this sound like? What does it sound like? What is this? What is this? You ask, like in the Zen koan. What is this? And then you stop. Because this is ineffable. It cannot be put in words. You know what I mean? All experience, not just this psychedelic experience, is ineffable. And it's this. You can say that it's consciousness, but consciousness is just a word. This is a way of referring to concrete experience of consciousness as non-conceptually as possible, without any like metaphysical or scientific connotations. Like if I say that this is qualitative, there is a quail of this sound, the quality of the sound. No. That is just theory. And that's what the so-called qualia freaks like Chalmers and others. No, I admire Chalmers. He's one of my favorite philosophers because he brings forth the real problem of consciousness. But speaking of this qualia, it really quickly misleads us, because then we get to this, they are something that cannot be captured in scientific terms, that are something not quantitative, not relational or structural, and that's why they are beyond scientific descriptions. Science only describes how things interact and what is their structure and so on, like quantitative descriptions. But what is the quality of the sound? These are important questions, but it all boils down to what is this? What is this? Do you get what I try to convey here? Do you understand that this is consciousness? This that we are living right now, right here. I am speaking to a cell phone, not to a cell phone, but to the person, you, beyond the other screen, to another consciousness. I'm speaking to another consciousness that could be also called this. You could call it this. For me, it's that or it or something else, because we are still distinct organisms, you and I, which is proven basically by the fact that you existed before you watched this video, completely independent of these words I'm uttering here. Now my words are affecting your consciousness, modifying that process that you are. But still you are that continuum, that process as a like spatio-temporal continuum that existed even before this interaction. But again, this is all that is real. In Zen they emphasize that the past has already gone, the future is not here yet. So the present moment is all there is. But right now, what I mean by this is the ineffable, non-conceptual, somehow primordial sense of being present here, consciousness, that is distinct from all descriptions. And I'm not saying that there would be no epistemic gap or no hard problem of consciousness. I'm just saying that this, what consciousness is, we can experience it through being it, because we are consciousness. We cannot help it. We cannot avoid being conscious, because if we were not this consciousness, I would be dead or unconscious, and nothing would exist for me anymore. I wouldn't exist. So that's why death is so incomprehensible, and non-consciousness, not this, is incomprehensible. But anyway, this is all. This is the absolute, all there is for me personally. You're this beyond that screen. If I would die here right now, I would get a heart attack. I would die here. Your consciousness would persist, even though my whole world would vanish. And this is really trivial. You might think this is really like the most trivial thing. But somehow I think it's also a profound thing that personally, think you personally, you have your consciousness, everything that you can imagine. But now try imagine being dead. You can't, because when you are dead, there is no consciousness for your part. You can imagine that some other consciousnesses, like mine, would remain, but you cannot imagine your own death. You're not having consciousness. So this is the same point as with these Zen koans. What is when the tree falls in the forest and no one is hearing? Does it make a sound? Well, the modern rational person says that there is the motion of air molecules, but no sensation, that is brain process. But then we should ask further, what is the motion of air molecules when you don't represent them as air molecules? What is the air molecule itself beyond your representation in your consciousness of that air molecule? What is the air molecule outside your consciousness, your own personal consciousness? And you cannot know, and the reason for that is that you cannot step outside this, your own consciousness, because it's absolute for you, it's your own whole existence. You cannot imagine anything beyond your consciousness. You cannot know what an atom is beyond your consciousness. So we are doomed to just represent things that are external to us or not this. And so that's a really long and complicated story, and it's part of this process that is unfolding here, that we are doing with the drumming meditations, with the sound meditations, that I'm doing in my philosophy right now, trying to get funding. So if you want to fund me, I will happily take your money so that I can continue doing my consciousness research, because I think it's important. Why is it important, you may ask? I ask myself. Suddenly I became really self-aware now, and like oroad på svenska, vad är det på engelska nu? Like worried. I became worried. That's my default mode, network activating, like neuroscientifically speaking, like becoming like self-aware. And that's somehow more distant from the brute existence itself, like this part. But now I'm like being led to a side route. Why is this important? It's important because we need to understand that the image is not the object. Like, you know, this picture of the pipe, it says, this is not a pipe. You could also have a picture of neural activation and write, this is not a neural process, because it's just the image on a computer screen, or it is an image in your mind, a mental picture. And you could have roughly the same image without knowing that it depicts neural activation. I could show it to my kid and they might not know that it's neural activation. It's just some kind of colors. But it's nevertheless always this. But okay, I become like misled here because I'm thinking in this holistic way now. Why is it important? It's because we should know the place of philosophy and science. When we are talking of philosophy of mind, that is what I do research in, we are talking about the place of us people in the world. What is our place in nature? What is the place of consciousness in nature? We are talking of like the most perennial questions. What is this? What is this existence here? It's important for its own sake. And it's also important like from a societal perspective. How much we value, for example, humanistic sciences or science, how much we value technology, how much we value nature. Often we think in really these anthropocentric or human-centric terms that we are something special. We are not special, and that doesn't make us smaller, it makes us bigger, because we are part of this wide cosmos. We are made of atoms. This consciousness is made of atoms just like everything else. And plants, the forests, they are quite close to us genetically or intrinsically in themselves. They are part of this same. They are forms of matter, just like my consciousness is a form of matter. And we should value all that exists, especially the complex and most beautiful things like living beings. We should value them as much as we sometimes value humans. And sometimes we don't value humans, or sometimes we don't value ourselves. And that's called depression, or that's one symptom of depression. I'm also a clinical psychologist, not a philosopher, so I'm concerned about mental health and depression because it's deadly. People kill themselves when they have depression. They do suicides. I know people who have killed themselves because of depression. I know my friends who have killed themselves because of depression. And you all know depressed people. Everybody knows depressed people. And I think part of depression, part of that suffering, there are many things, of course. You cannot just reduce it to something specific. But part of depression is not being able to see this existence in all its magnificence. And somehow I think that's why psychedelic therapies for depression work so wonderfully well, that they enable the depressed person to see the magnificence of all this again, and to see how artificial and conceptual fictitious all these ruminations are, to see beyond words in a way. This is all related, and I cannot say that I can really pinpoint it right now, and that's why I just record this process where I try to understand what this is. And that brings us to this. So if we are lost in that default mode network activation, or these egocentric processes of not being present in this moment, not being mindful, although I don't really like that term, I prefer the term this. So people are not present in this, although in a sense they are always present when they are conscious. They cannot help being present in this unless they die. But these all these conceptual processes, they still somehow distance ourselves from this brute existence right here now. We live in the past, or we live in the future, or we conceptualize things and fail to see their intrinsic meaningfulness. It's all intrinsically meaningful, just like pleasure and pain are intrinsically meaningful. Pleasure means survival, intrinsically. Pain means death. And that's what drives us. Emotions move us. It comes from emotivere, to move, and in Finnish, liikuttua, to become moved. I was moved by it. We fail to see that, and we become alienated from ourselves, so to speak. And these sound meditations, it can be something else for you. It can be, if you like to draw, you can draw. If you like to run or dance or other kinds of exercises, I like doing something because I'm a bit ADHD. So I become like this restless easily. So I like to do something like this. And I just try to keep a constant rhythm. And I try to find these kinds of sounds. it makes different sounds in different angles. And I also use, I will show quickly. I use all these kinds of things. These are might be called stanssi in Finnish. That this is like a bit sharp. You put it like on a wood, and then you hit it here, or you put like this handle here, and you just hit it. Ai perskules! It was a bit sharp. But anyway, I use these. To produce all kinds of sounds. And that somehow enables at least myself to be present in this. I just focus on the sounds. What is it? What is this? What is this? And we do it with my friend. He plays often the guitar or a drum, and we have all kinds of, you can play anything. One of the tricks is that you don't conceptualize this. It feels really good in your hands because it's quite heavy. And I don't really know what it is. For me, it's this, trivially. And this is a cowbell, a real cowbell from a real cow. I don't know the cow, maybe it has been similar. It's an issue in its own right, this animal production. But just feel it. What is this beyond all the concepts and habituations? Because we fail to see what this is really. Because it's not a cowbell. This is not a cowbell. And this is not a stance or piece of metal. And this is not a drum. I also have this kind of, like more traditional drum. It produces lots of sounds. And you have to get rid of these preconceptions to be able, and you can even play this. Well, you get the point. I get lost in this. I start to listen to that. I also have autistic traits. I tend to get like really focused on certain things, especially sounds. Sounds are really important for me. And I also, that has a downside because I have this sensitivity to like eating sounds. I become really distracted by eating sounds easily, and also by traffic noise and so on. So everything has its both sides. But this is not a tape machine. Actually, I used this to fix the cell phone there because I don't have any proper equipment. And this is not a cowbell, and this is not a piece of metal. You know what I'm trying to say now. You understand what I'm trying to say. This is not anything conceptual. This is not consciousness. This is not qualitative, or this is not neural activation, which is just a scientific model. And qualitative is a philosophical model of what consciousness is, what this is. And this is not even consciousness, and this is not even this. This is the main point. This is not this. And that's why we do these drumming meditations, because this is this. It's not the word this. You know, this is kind of trivial, and I think you become bored. It's half an hour, I need to go, I have a lunch meeting, and I really should work. But this is so interesting. You know what I'm talking about. I will continue. What is this? Can you hear the birds singing? The sound of traffic coming from distance or construction site. The birds are waking up because it's springtime. This